The grand hall was filled with bright lights, elegant decorations, and the gentle sound of conversations floating through the air. Guests from different corners of the entertainment world had gathered for one of the most anticipated public events of the season. Cameras flashed every few seconds, capturing smiles, greetings, and memorable moments. Among the attendees was Baris Arduc, who arrived with his usual calm and confident presence. Dressed elegantly and carrying a warm smile, he greeted colleagues, posed for photographs, and exchanged friendly words with people he had known for years. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Yet, as the evening continued, something felt different. Across the hall, Elçin Sangu had also arrived. She was surrounded by reporters, industry professionals, and admirers who were eager to speak with her. Like always, she handled every conversation with grace and professionalism. When Baris noticed Elcin from a distance, a familiar smile appeared on his face. They had shared countless public events over the years. Whenever they crossed paths, there was usually a friendly greeting, a brief conversation, and often a memorable photo that fans would cherish. This evening, however, seemed unusual. As Baris slowly made his way through the crowd, he noticed that Elcin appeared unusually busy. Every time he thought she might have a free moment, someone else approached her first. A journalist requested an interview. A producer invited her to join a discussion. Another group wanted photographs. Baris simply waited. There was no sign of frustration on his face. Only patience. After all, large events could be unpredictable. Several minutes later, an opportunity finally seemed to appear. Elcin finished speaking with a group of guests and began walking toward another section of the hall. Their paths looked as though they would naturally cross. For a brief moment, Baris thought they would finally have a chance to talk. But just before reaching him, Elcin was approached by an event organizer who urgently needed her attention. She politely followed the organizer toward another area. Baris stopped walking. His smile remained, though it seemed slightly smaller than before. Nearby photographers captured dozens of images without realizing that a simple conversation had just been delayed once again. As the evening progressed, whispers began spreading among guests. Not dramatic whispers. Just harmless curiosity. Some assumed it was merely coincidence. Others believed the crowded schedule was responsible. Nobody truly knew. Meanwhile, Baris continued interacting with everyone around him. He laughed during conversations, congratulated fellow artists on their recent projects, and remained as professional as ever. Yet from time to time, his eyes drifted toward the other side of the room. The distance between them was never very large. But somehow, the opportunity to speak never arrived. Hours passed. The event moved into its main ceremony. Guests took their seats while presenters prepared to announce awards and special recognitions. Baris sat quietly among the audience. Several rows away sat Elcin. The atmosphere became more formal and conversations gradually faded into silence. During one of the presentations, applause filled the hall. Baris joined in respectfully. As he looked around, he briefly noticed Elcin speaking with someone seated beside her. She seemed focused, engaged, completely occupied by the event. There was nothing unusual about it. Yet for reasons he could not fully explain, Baris felt a strange sense of distance. Not anger, not disappointment, just uncertainty. Sometimes uncertainty could be more powerful than any clear answer. When people know what is happening, they can respond accordingly. When they do not know, their imagination fills the empty spaces. He remembered earlier events from years before. The laughter shared during public appearances. The friendly conversations behind the scenes. The easy comfort of greeting a familiar face in a crowded room. Those memories felt warm. They reminded him how quickly time could pass. The evening eventually reached its final stage. Guests stood from their seats and began mingling once again. Music returned. Conversations resumed. The formal atmosphere relaxed. Baris decided that before the night ended, he would at least say hello. Nothing more. A simple greeting. As he crossed the hall, he finally spotted Elcin standing near one of the exits. For the first time all evening, there appeared to be no crowd surrounding her. This was the perfect moment. He took a few steps forward, then another, and another. But just as he approached, Elcin's phone rang. After glancing at the screen, she answered the call. Her expression became serious. Moments later, she quietly excused herself from the people nearby and headed toward a private area. Baris stopped once again. This time, he did not continue walking. Instead, he looked toward the exit doors, where guests were beginning to leave. A friend standing nearby noticed his thoughtful expression. "Everything okay?" the friend asked. Baris smiled politely. "Of course," he replied. And perhaps he truly meant it. Yet there was still that unanswered question lingering in his mind. Why had the evening unfolded this way? Was it merely a series of coincidences? Had schedules simply refused to cooperate? Or was there something he did not understand? The answers remained hidden. As the event slowly came to an end, Baris stepped outside into the cool night air. The city lights sparkled in the distance. Behind him, the celebration continued. Ahead of him lay silence. For the first time that evening, he allowed himself a quiet moment of reflection. He wasn't searching for explanations. Not yet. But he knew one thing. The next time their paths crossed, he would try to find out whether this unusual distance was nothing more than a misunderstanding or the beginning of a mystery he never expected. The following morning arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze moving through the city. While most people were beginning another ordinary day, Baris found himself thinking about the previous evening more than he expected. The event had ended hours ago, yet the unanswered questions remained. He sat near a large window in his apartment, holding a cup of coffee while watching the city slowly come to life. Cars moved through the streets below. People hurried toward work. Everything seemed normal. But his thoughts kept returning to the same moment. Or rather, the lack of one. A simple greeting had never happened. Every opportunity had disappeared before it could begin. Baris wasn't upset. He was simply curious. For years, professional events had always felt predictable. Familiar faces would meet, exchange a few words, and continue with their schedules. What happened last night felt different. After finishing his coffee, he picked up his phone and looked through several photos that media outlets had published from the event. Smiling guests, award winners, group photographs, celebrations. Everything looked exactly as the public had seen it. Nobody would have guessed that he had spent the entire evening trying to find a chance for one short conversation. He set the phone down and focused on the day's responsibilities. There were meetings to attend, scripts to review, future projects to discuss. Life continued moving forward. Yet every now and then, his thoughts quietly returned to Elcin. Not because of drama, not because of conflict, but because uncertainty often leaves a stronger impression than certainty. Several days passed. Work became busy. Schedules filled with appointments. The memory of the event gradually began fading into the background. Then one afternoon, while attending a production meeting, Baris heard something unexpected. A colleague casually mentioned an upcoming charity gathering that would take place later that week. Many familiar faces from the entertainment industry were expected to attend, including Elcin. The information caught his attention immediately, not because he had planned anything, but because it presented another opportunity to discover whether the previous event had simply been an unusual coincidence. The charity gathering was far smaller than the grand ceremony from earlier in the week. There would be fewer reporters, fewer crowds, fewer interruptions. If there truly had been a misunderstanding, the evening of the charity event arrived. Unlike the previous venue, this location felt warm and intimate. Soft lighting illuminated the hall. Round tables filled the room. Guests mingled comfortably while discussing the cause they had gathered to support. When Baris entered, he immediately noticed the relaxed atmosphere. People weren't rushing from interview to interview. There were no overwhelming crowds. Everything felt calm. For the first time in days, he felt confident that a conversation would naturally happen. As he greeted several guests, he noticed Elcin speaking with a group of organizers near the center of the room. She appeared focused but relaxed. Occasionally, she smiled and laughed during the discussion. The sight reassured him. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing suggested tension or discomfort. The evening continued peacefully. Guests participated in fundraising activities and listened to speeches about the charitable projects being supported. At one point, Baris found himself standing only a short distance away from Elcin. Close enough to greet her. Close enough to begin a conversation. He considered walking over. Then another guest approached him with a question about an upcoming project. A brief discussion followed. Only a few minutes. Nothing significant. Yet when the conversation ended, Elcin had already moved elsewhere. Baris couldn't help but smile at the irony. Another missed opportunity. Not because anyone was avoiding anyone. As the night progressed, guests began gathering near a display showcasing the charity's achievements. Baris joined the crowd. To his surprise, Elcin arrived moments later. For the first time in days, there was no distance between them. No crowded hallway. No sudden interruption. No disappearing opportunity. They stood only a few steps apart. Baris prepared to say hello. Before he could speak, one of the organizers stepped onto a small stage and requested everyone's attention. A presentation was about to begin. The room immediately quieted. Guests turned toward the stage. The moment vanished once more. Baris almost laughed. The situation had become so unlikely that it felt impossible not to find humor in it. For the next 30 minutes, everyone remained focused on the presentation. Videos played on large screens. Speakers shared inspiring stories. The audience listened attentively. When the presentation finally ended, applause filled the room. Guests slowly returned to their conversations. Baris looked around. Elcin was gone. Not permanently. Simply elsewhere in the venue. But once again, their paths had separated. At this point, even he began wondering whether fate was playing some kind of harmless joke. The evening eventually approached its conclusion. Guests thanked organizers and prepared to leave. As Baris collected his coat, he noticed something interesting. Near the exit stood one of Elcin's longtime colleagues. After exchanging greetings, they spoke briefly about the event. During the conversation, the colleague mentioned something unexpected. Elcin has been incredibly busy lately, the colleague said. She's been helping coordinate several projects behind the scenes. Her schedule has been overwhelming. Baris listened carefully. The statement explained a lot. Perhaps more than the colleague realized. Maybe there had never been any deliberate distance. Maybe the constant distractions, phone calls, meetings, and responsibilities had simply been exactly what they appeared to be. Busy schedules. Nothing more. The realization eased some of the uncertainty he had been carrying. Still, one question remained unanswered. Had Elcin even noticed all the missed opportunities? Or had she been so occupied that she never realized they kept narrowly missing each other? The answer remained unknown. As Baris stepped outside into the evening air, he felt strangely optimistic. Not because he had found a complete explanation, but because the mystery no longer seemed negative. Sometimes circumstances create distance where none is intended. Sometimes timing becomes the only obstacle. And sometimes answers arrive slowly. As he walked toward his car, his phone vibrated. A new notification appeared on the screen. His eyes widened slightly as he read the sender's name. The message was short, simple, unexpected, and it came from Elcin. For a moment, he stared at the screen without opening it. The unanswered questions of the past week suddenly felt closer to being resolved. What was inside that message? And would it finally explain everything?